This is Business Edge on News Central. I'm Tolulope Adeleru-Balogun. Our headline story: review of African stock exchanges. Africa, like the rest of the world, experienced reduced earnings in 2020. But today we look at those equity markets or share markets that gave investors some respite last year. We'll also touch base with a few stories we're keeping our eyes on with NC4 to watch before we wrap the show. Welcome. This is Business Edge. Good news for investors in Nigeria and a win for the regulators of Africa's largest economy, as the Nigerian Stock Exchange (NSE) took pole position and was named the best performing stock market of 2020. This came from a poll of 93 equity indexes being tracked by Bloomberg across the world. The all-share index, which opened at 38,800.01, inched higher by 310.16 points, or 0.80%, to cross the 39,000 mark and close at 39,110.17. Also, market capitalization rose by 167 billion naira to close at 200.446 trillion naira, compared with 20.279 trillion naira achieved on Thursday before the Christmas and Boxing Day holidays. Now, year-to-date returns are currently at 45.7%, the best annual return since 2013. Not to be left out, South African shares kicked off 2021 on a strong note, lifted by bullish global sentiment driven by hopes for an economic recovery. But the rand pared gains late in the afternoon to trade flat on the day, amid growing criticism of the country's COVID-19 vaccine strategy. South Africa has yet to receive its first doses of coronavirus vaccines, alarming some health experts, trade unions, and analysts concerned about the potential economic impact of a slow rollout. I have financial analyst Janet Ogunkoya joining me on Business Edge as we take a look at how African stock markets performed last year and also project towards what this year will bring. Janet, thank you so much for joining me on Business Edge.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right. So let's talk about it. Nigeria, the best performing stock exchange of the year. What does that make up? What do we know that was Bloomberg tracking in terms of being able to come to this realization?
Yeah, so again, thanks for having me. So, we gained last year. From the start of the year, we were probably not that optimistic to have, the market turn out the way it did. So obviously very, very positive for particularly local investors, that were able to at least get some gains on the exchange. In Q1, just from the first quarter or second quarter, the market was down by over 20% during the year. So it was really a strong for the Nigerian stock market to close the market to close the year up at 50%, the best performing in the world. We had our immigration issues, or we had our unique issues that actually drove the gain that is showing in the market, which just quickly as October in 2019, when the CBN came up with the policies that restricted local investor participation in the oil market. As a result, there was limited investment pockets for investors to go into. It took a while for investors to chip in. Like I said, the market was down by about 20% or over 20% during the year. And that was mostly due to concerns on COVID and then the whole foreign exchange and issues that we have. So we closed the year positive because we saw quite a lot of, particularly local investors, just rally or buy into stocks to perhaps gain enjoy some dividends and yields, which would definitely be better than the critical fixed income instruments. And also, most of the stocks were actually trading quite cheap at the time. So it was a good decision for most of the local investors.
Okay. So what role or impact, if any, did foreign direct investment have in terms of Nigeria coming out of 2020 on a strong note?
Okay, so you mean looking at we definitely didn't see foreign investors speak as much in the stock market in 2020. And it's understandable. When you look at the fact that I mean, when you even have to analyze the stock market on its own, as much as the market was up 50% on Naira levels, when you look at it at USD levels, the market was up by about 27%. That's looking at it in dollar terms, right? And then based on that, it just shows the extent of depreciation that we had in the market. And that 37% depreciation is even based on, the Naira on the I&E rate, which is taken around 3.94. Not to speak of, the actual reality of 470 that we have in our market. So essentially, it's an institution where there's a lot of, there's no clarity for investors. There's still some backlash for investors. Investors are invested in the country, trying to exit that. They're not able to get dollars to exit the country. There's a lot of dollar liquidity. And then, so foreign investors will definitely have to be very, very cautious to trade in Nigeria, and particularly because of, the risk I was making the
Okay. Let's also talk about some policy changes that came towards the end of the year and if they may have had impact as well. We know that the Central Bank of Nigeria sort of changed its mind, let's put that lightly, in terms of allowing foreign remittances to come in with foreign currencies. Do you think that this might have had any impact on improving the NSE's performance? Where does that all come into the picture?
Honestly, I don't see that playing a big role. So that coming in the picture would definitely, when you look at the parallel market, we see that, just to show the CBN announced that policy, to allow remittances to be withdrawn in cash or in FX cash across countries, like to collect them in USD across countries. Before that happened, you see that the parallel market rate was going as high as 509 in the black market, right? But then, since that policy came up, since there's been some improved liquidity in the black market, the FX in last check has been stable around 470 naira to the dollar, right? So which is kind of negative, considering that during a festive period like we just had in December, so typically you'd have expected further depreciation of the naira because that's where you have a higher demand for FX of the dollars, right? So, and it's seeing appreciation from the $700 level to 470. Right, so definitely positive for at least to ensure some stability in the Naira exchange. But as far as it's feeding into the Nigerian stock market performance, it's definitely a long shot to tie that to the market performance in the later end of the year.
Okay, so let's talk about the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. They started the year on an impressive note and recently released the HIS Market Purchasing Managers Index, which shows there's some stability there. What's leading to that? We know that they are a country like Nigeria that is in some form of recession right now. The economy is suffering, has suffered because of the previous lockdown in South Africa right now is on a level 3 lockdown once again. So with this index coming out, showing some stability there, can you tell us where that stability is coming from?
Okay, so for the South African market performance, I mean, that's even take a look at 2020 for them. The market was actually up for them by around 4%, right? And it really back the market where, as at March, the market was down by as much as 30%. That's similar to what we had here in Nigeria, right? And then, we started to see some improvements for them. And the improvement for them actually came up where, most of their gold stocks, because they have quite a lot of stocks on their exchange with exposure to gold. And you recall gold actually, we started some gains last year. So that definitely said positive for some of the stocks we saw on the exchange there. But as far back as, at least for this current rally that we're seeing, yesterday in 2021, there's been some gains in Linkage. Linkage is a tech fund investor, which has like a 30% stake in Tencent, right? So there's been some rally in Tencent that has fed into the rally that we saw in Linkage, and that has definitely propelled some gains for Johannesburg. Also, there's also some stress around, globally, there's low yields, just, speaking generally speaking, there's global low yields now where investors in global markets, in enhanced global markets particularly, would want to look for, alternative markets, and perhaps, there's just part that, at the start of this year, there was some expectation of, recovery in Johannesburg, in South Africa's economy. So, all of that positive, low yields from foreign markets, trying to look for alternative investments to see the South African market as positive. So you have a corporation like the Johannesburg, we're trading off the back of 10 cents, and then we also have the positive sentiment from foreign investors with regards to Johannesburg market. You know that investing in, there's a limited bucket or exposure that you have to Nigeria. We have a South African market that has a market cap of almost $1 trillion, which is very well.
Okay.
A good option for investors.
Okay, let's stay on South Africa for a moment. The stimulus package that the South African government gave because of the coronavirus, that happened. And we've seen that they've done some more things in order to aid businesses. But when you look at Nigeria, it seems it's the aviation sector that's received some form of stimulus or some form of funding because of the coronavirus. So what is South Africa doing right or maybe doing wrong in terms of stimulating their economy to get through this time that they find themselves? And what do you think Nigeria needs to do?
Well, I think on top of my head, I'll just say Johannesburg has an easier or a smoother transmission mechanism to see how the policies that they put up actually, start at the grassroots. For Nigeria, I think one of the challenges we've had is we've heard of, numerous incentive packages and given by the central bank. When you compare that to our GDP, you compare that to South Africa, looking at the age of the population of Nigeria, I feel like it's not quite as it's not difficult to drive the kind of impact that you would want to, and we have a situation in South Africa where even despite having the rising COVID cases, they're able to make with what they have, and there's also some opportunity. Whether they can get the vaccine or whether they can't. So, I believe the difference between the two economies will have to come from there, having smoother transmission mechanism where, the policies set up by government is set by the grassroots or set by the companies that actually need some of these information.
Okay, so Janet, let's take a quick time out. When we come back, we'll get into more issues. We'll look at possible improvement in the bond yields for 2021, if you think that's something that might be on the table. But we'll also talk about the new African Stock Exchange Linkage project that's being developed by the African Development Bank and get into what happens, defaults and devaluations from last year. What are your projections for this year? I'm speaking to financial analyst Janet Ogunkoya. This is Business Edge. We'll be right back.
Emphasis has always been on IPP. Financiers need guarantees. The cost of the offtake was quite high. So over the last 5 years, the narrative has changed. It's no more discussing generation and distribution. Now it's actually taking the products to the consumers. Now, if the end products is meant for the consumers, why do financiers and developers always insist on guarantees from the government? That's the question that I think that we would take away from this session or from this event. How would we ensure that collection is enhanced, that consumers pay for power, and if need be, optimize their consumption? Right now, we know the cost of power via electric generators is quite high, yet consumers are reluctant to pay a higher price for grid power. The question is, when it comes from the government sources guaranteed by the government, the consumers seem to have a different view of it. So those are the issues that the financiers, developers, and the government, plus the consumer groups, have to come together, sit down and say, this is a workable solution. It's worked successfully in advanced countries and some emerging markets. Don't see the reason why not.
Africa is rising. Again, we hear our sounds echo on the other side. Afrobeat and Afropop reinvented, hip life brought back to life, new energy infused into Kwaito and Kwela. Africa is balling. Every stroke, every shot, every raise, we find our place at the top. Taking the helm of real power, new hopes for democracies. A breed of entrepreneurial tigers, audacious storytellers, and a promising generation raring to go. Truly, Africa is rising. And this is where the stories that define our continent live.
This is Business Edge, and I'm still talking to Janet Ogunkoya, financial analyst. And we heard that last year, Nigeria was the best performing stock exchange out of 93 that were being tracked by Bloomberg. But there are more conversations than just that. So let's get to the next part of it. There are 29 exchanges thereabouts in Africa, representing 38 nations' capital markets. Now, Janet, aside from Nigeria and South Africa, which of the exchanges do you think are performing to some level optimally? Who should we keep our eye on for 2021?
Okay, so I mean, when we checked in presented the three topics that you would want to either at least for sub-Saharan Africa would be Nigeria, South Africa, and perhaps Kenya. Slightly for Kenya, you know, about 14 companies have come out to actually, you know, give some profit warning because of the whole coronavirus situation that happened. So I mean, they've been quite hit by the coronavirus. But the only positive of Kenya right now is the private fund, which, you know, constitutes about 59% of the entire index of this market cap. You know, it's actually having some positive, so about like the previous about a few weeks back now. And it was announced that they could actually, you know, earn some fees that were kept on hold due to the coronavirus situation. So that would definitely, you know, give some good deals for, give some good positives. And in the market, the stock was actually up 7.9%. You know, and like I said, it contributes almost 60% of the entire market. So that's the positive that investors could look out for. So at least the Kenya, that's like the way that they have. But aside that, it's just the fact that, you know, the whole coronavirus situation has actually hit a lot of companies, and it's 14 companies coming out with these corporate warnings compared to about 9 that announced in 2019. Like, it definitely shows, you know, it shows that investors have to be cautious. But there's some positives for, you know, like we've seen in this trend where, you know, technology tends to thrive or has shown to actually thrive positive despite of the pandemic. And it's understandable because we have many people. So Safaricom will definitely, you know, enjoy some benefits from that angle.
Okay, so let's talk about bond yields and what we've seen. Now, of course, the coronavirus has hit everyone hard, and it's hit the African economy quite hard as well. Do you think 2021 is the year that we'll see an improvement to pre-coronavirus levels for the bond market, or do we need to wait till 2022, or is this something that we're looking at getting back to pre-coronavirus levels in 2023? What's your projection regarding this?
Honestly, I mean, it's pretty much expected to remain the same. From where the corner is found, it's very hard to, you know, look for any factor that will actually drive this. The fact is just, you know, there's quite a lot of liquidity in the market. There's limited investment options for investors. So, you know, it's almost as if the government, you know, the government could give you supply has the main cards right now because there's quite a lot of demand for the bonds and the like. So it's more likely, you know, to maintain the current trend that we're seeing, you know, in the market, except to see something, you know, drastically happen perhaps. You know, government, you know, just ramps up borrowing drastically and shows some kind of desperation. You know, I mean, the CBN special deal that was introduced a few weeks back actually helped to push yields up just slightly by a few bits, right? Nothing significant because, you know, like I said, there's still quite significant demand of liquidity in the market and limited investment options. So, yeah, so I try to see a dumping supply really kind of demand that is, you know, as referred by the liquidity in market, I feel, or I think the general person can believe that we'll continue to see new June at current levels.
Okay, so a new African stock exchange's Linkage project is being promoted by the African Development Bank, AFDB, with other stakeholders. Now, this would integrate stock exchanges across the continent, and it's set to create an integrated capital markets on the continent with capitalization in excess of $1 trillion. The incoming African stock exchange's capitalization would represent 90% of Africa's total equity markets. What do you think about this project? Because there's going to be a lot of movement on it this year with the push from the African Development Bank.
So it's definitely an interesting time to come up. Considering we're just coming up with a sector that kicked off in January. So, all of this is usually quite competitive, particularly on paper, or almost impossible to say, on paper. Obviously it's positive considering having, to have this synergetic advantage of it where the bigger countries or the bigger African markets could perhaps encourage some exposure in some smaller markets, right? And then have that integration with the joint market. It definitely encourage more foreign investors into the market. But then it's just when you think it's having to think through what's the dynamics, how would that exactly do it? So like I said, each country has its own specific issues. Like I mentioned, in the entire sub-Saharan Africa, there are very few markets that investors would usually want to take a look at, mostly because liquidity is very weak and they have very little liquidity. So perhaps that would help on that front because as a foreign investor, if I wanted to invest in a smaller country, for instance, right, and I have an investment is almost towards the entire stock exchange, what's the return and how liquid, in terms of liquidity in that market. So, it sounds like a brilliant idea, but then it's just how does that come up? How does that work out? How does governance and skill, most countries usually want to repent of anything with issues. So, how do you intend to integrate, governance in this issues? I think that's one of the key issues that would need to be tackled.
Okay.
Also, trying to carry everybody along together, considering everybody has different issues, different currency issues, and the like. So it's quite a legislative before.
All right. Janet, thank you so much. Let me interject. I apologize. Time is not with us. I do appreciate your time today. Thank you so much, Janet Ogunkoya, financial analyst, for being with us on Business Edge and breaking down a few of these issues. We look forward to talking to you again next time.
Of course, thanks for having me.
All right, thank you. Okay, we're wrapping things up, and we do that with NC4 to watch. The Egyptian economy is expected to see growth of 2.7% in fiscal year 2020-2021, down from 3.6% in 2019-2020. And this is according to the World Bank's Global Economic Prospects Report. The report said that the country is forecast to see further growth rise to 5.8% in 2021-2022. Activity in Kenya's private sector recorded a slight improvement in December following a sharp deceleration of growth in November. And this comes from the monthly Purchasing Managers Index, PMI. Output rose at the slowest rates in 6 months, although new order growth quickened slightly. The survey showed that higher employment supported the upturn in output, but business confidence fell to a new record low. South Africa's private sector business activity has been largely stable in December, with business confidence under some pressure from COVID-19, which is also disrupting supply chains. The latest IHS Markit SA Purchasing Managers Index and economy-wide gauge of business conditions fell to 50.2 index points in the final month of 2020. And finally, about 3 years after a similar order, the federal government has again suspended the deduction of 7.5% value-added tax on airfares and other air transport services. The latest suspension order, scheduled to take effect on January the 1st, 2021, is contained in the 2020 Finance Act, recently signed by President Muhammadu Buhari. That's it on this edition of Business Edge. Follow us on social media. We are at News Central TV. You can head to our website and download our mobile app on Google Play Store and iOS. Till next time, I'm Tolulope Adeleru-Balogun.